education, introduction to law, and occasionally professional responsibilities. And it's a pleasure to be here. All right, so what we're gonna do is I wanted to do a little icebreaker with the panelists to kind of break the ice with everyone, to let everyone know that everyone up here was an actual person before they was.
I'm still
You
a person.
You've leveled up. So just to let everyone know that everyone here was exactly where you were at some point, looking up to people and trying to find guidance, and just so you know that it doesn't happen overnight, and things do happen that you have to get through. And so we can just start at the end, Yvonne, with your icebreaker.
Okay.
Oh, sorry, let me say what it is. See?
It's
Learning and growing. Okay, so they're gonna share an anecdote or a story about overcoming a challenge during their journey to become an attorney, whether it was getting low grades, a low class rank, or a mistake at work, or just something where they should have gone left and they went right. So, yeah, Yvonne, thank you.
All right. So, like Pauline said, I am foreign trained. So I schooled back in Nigeria. It's in Africa, for those that don't know. And so when I came here, I had to take the bar, and it's the same principle, but we have a little difference in the law. Okay, everything is all under common law, but we still have to check, where to do. So I had to first of all think, where do I want to take the bar? Like I was telling Damian, I used to live in California. So do I want to take the California bar? Do I want to take the New York bar? It's not as hard as you're thinking. She's shaking her head like, no, don't do that. Yeah, but then I chose the New York bar, and I had to study like everybody else and to pass. And when I passed the bar, I'm like, you know what, let me go to New York and see if I really want to continue in this field. I'm just gonna work for a year and then I'll move back to California. But that's like 10 years ago. So I'm still waiting to move back to California. And I never did. It took me a while to fall in love with New York, but I finally did. So I am still living in New York. So it's not like, I don't know how to say, it was a little hard to decide whether to really continue. For those of us that are foreigners, when you come, the first thing everybody tell you is be a nurse. Go read and be an RON. That's where the money is. So I had a lot of that from family and friends telling me, oh, forget about the law thing. Just go do an RB and be a nurse. They have more job security and all of that. So I had a real struggle whether do I really want to continue with this or go somewhere else. And a cousin of mine actually told me, it's like, you're a lady and you do have an accent, so you may not really be able to do well in law. Yes, that's how much people tell you. And I had to prove them all wrong by doing what I do today. And so that was some challenges for me to really initially I didn't get the support that I wanted, with exception of one or two persons that were really like, no, do what you want to do what makes you happy. And that was what I ended up doing. And I can tell you, I wake up in the morning, I'm happy to get up and go to work because it is what I love doing. So I hope that helps somebody.
Thank you. Demani?
Yeah, my story is not as exciting. So for me, well, let me impart this bit of knowledge that somebody imparted to me a little too late in my career, at least my career during law school. It's grades drive the bus, depending on what you're ultimately trying to do with your legal career. For me, the adjustment from from undergrad to law school was a struggle, because the law school exam, and we may get deeper into the weeds in that as this panel discussion continues, is unlike any exam that you've ever taken. You just get one exam for your torts class, your contracts class, your constitutional law class, and your grade for the entire semester is based upon that one exam. That exam is not like any exam you've seen during your undergraduate years. It's not like a multiple choice or fill in the blank. It's a little more complex than that, and we'll get into that. I say that to say that my goal upon getting into law school was ultimately to get to a big law firm, something similar to where Dara is right now, something similar to where I am right now. But with my grades not being satisfactory for that universe, I had to chart another course. And that other course was, okay, well, where's my skill set? My skill set was in trial advocacy. Well, where can I use that skill set to advance pretty quickly? The district attorney's office. So that's where I went. Nothing wrong with the DA's office, but I needed to use that as a platform to get to where I needed to go. How did I do that? Well, one thing about being at the DA's office, you don't really write a lot. And at a place like I'm at right now, where Dara is, writing is the key. You need to have good legal writing skills. So I manufactured ways at the DA's office to create that and used the sample to ultimately get the federal clerkship, which was the propelling point to get to the law firm. The moral of that story is get a good mentor if you do choose to go to law school. Learn before you get to law school how to take a law school exam, and your experience will be a lot easier.
Thank you. Dara?
So when I thought about this question, I first thought of doing a really lawyer-like thing and not answering your question and answering the question I wanted to answer, but then I decided I would actually answer the question. So, so for me, I've had a bit of a route to where I am now. Starting off in the law firm where I am now, but I started off as what I like to call a real associate. So I was actually an associate doing the billable work of the firm, which was corporate work for very big companies involving a lot of money. I didn't know anything about this area of the law. I didn't know anything about business. And in the first matter that I was on, which was a huge investigation, I actually had to ask another associate on my team what an investment bank was. So I really was starting from nowhere. And I never thought that's the area of law I wanted to practice, but I wanted to start there to get the experience and the training, and I knew the firms had a lot of money and they could pour that into training, and there'd be really smart lawyers I could learn from. And so my goal in starting there was not because that's where I wanted to end up. It's more that I wanted to start there and leave. And what happened for me was that after, I actually liked it. I was surprised that I actually enjoyed it. It was an interesting job and I was challenged and I liked it, but I knew once I had children I definitely didn't want to do it anymore because I didn't feel passionate about the work. So when I had my first child, I actually gave notice to the firm and said I was going to leave, and at that time the firm was really interested in retaining women and they allowed me to stay on very flexibly and work part-time, and I did that for a while. And I started to really just do pro bono, which means I was just doing the work for clients for free, and I was not doing the work for any of the clients that paid, which is not what you're supposed to do when you're there. And I sort of decided I would do that for as long as that worked. And I did, and it lasted several years because I developed an expertise in family law, and that was necessary because we had so many family law matters. So it sort of wound up working for a while until it didn't work. And it didn't work when I was almost 9 months pregnant with my third child. So this is where the real challenge comes in, because I had been told many times that I needed to start doing billable work, and I just wasn't, and I was sort of waiting it out. And I waited it out a little too long because I was very pregnant when the decision came on my part, did I want to go back to doing billable work or leave? And I chose to leave at that point. And so that was a hard decision. I left 8 months pregnant with my third child, and luckily found a job doing legal writing from home for a law firm in Connecticut. And I wrote briefs for this lawyer in Connecticut for 2 years and was able to spend a lot of time with my children, and then moved on to Sanctuary. And I use that story because I think that, for lawyers, one of my favorite things about being a lawyer is that there's so many different things you can do with the law, and this panel's going to really show you that. But while I left the firm and did the writing job, which was very different from anything I had done, I also took another job starting a law program at an elementary school. And so that was 13 years ago, and I still teach at the elementary school. I teach a law class for 5th graders that I developed 13 years ago, which I know for 5th graders it's sort of ridiculous, but kind of amazing. Definitely something I didn't experience in 5th grade, or I hadn't seen a courtroom until I got to law school. So, but we do a whole mock trial program with them, and I just think that that's one thing that you guys really. Law doesn't mean one thing. It doesn't have to mean a law firm. It doesn't have to mean public interest. It doesn't have to mean teaching. There's so many different things you can do. You can follow any of your passions and find a way to do it with the law.
Thank you, Paul.
Well, I echo what Damani said about law school. It was the most miserable 3 years of my life. I'm sorry, no, but
But if you
there's
want to
a-
go, you should
there's
go.
I did well in school through, until I got to law school, and honestly, I didn't have the right attitude. And you have to work. So be prepared to work when you go to law school. There's a lot of reading. And as Damani said, your whole semester is based on this one test at the end of the semester. And that's a lot of pressure. And I wasn't ready for that in my first year. And so I had a very rough time. And what really made a difference to me was an internship that I did at the end of my second year, and I ended up continuing in that internship through my third year. And through that internship, I got my first job, and I got a lifelong mentor who is the one who's responsible for encouraging me in this path to become a judge, because it wasn't something that I saw in myself. I didn't think this was something I could do or would be interested in, but she saw whatever she saw, and she was a great and prolific writer. And the first thing I wrote for her is a second semester in my second year was a brief working for the Court of Appeals. So she said, "We'll take this home and write a brief." So I took it home and gave it to her. And when I got it back, I could hardly see what I wrote because she wrote all over it. And it was a little, discouraging, but she was a great mentor, and we sat down and went over all of the advice and corrections, and it was a great learning experience. So that's one thing I would encourage you to do, even now, is to go some internships. And the law is broad. The law is broad. When I was in law school, I really had no idea what I wanted to do, but through this internship, and the internship helped law school to make sense to me, because I was able to be with people who were practicing. I saw how the practice worked, and then things made sense to me then. So that's the one thing I would encourage a lot, is get internships. Law school is demanding. Maybe it's not something you want to do the first year, depending on your situations, but it's something that you definitely should pursue. It made all the difference for me in terms of law school itself, and then after law school, and it's all part of networking. You need to network. Every job that I got in forever was through networking. So, and that's how you hear about things and get advice about different avenues that you can pursue. But all I'm saying, the main thing is, when you go to law school, be prepared to work and be prepared to put in the time. There's nothing else you can do. There's no shortcut. You're gonna have to read the Horn books. I don't know if they still call them that. The cases. I would suggest writing, because legal writing is different from other writing. So if you can take writing courses, because practicing law is a way of thinking, a way of writing. It's different. And the only way you can do it and learn what you want to do is to go out and experience it. Okay, law school, I always say law school can teach you principles, but it cannot necessarily teach you how to practice law. That you have to go out and experience and see it in action. And then that was how things started to gel for me. All those courses and those theories started to come together when I saw it in action.
Thank you.
What I'd like to touch on actually, Damani and the former judge also talked about it a little bit. I think something else that you also have to learn is the power of networking and the importance of mentorship, and I think that took me a very long time to master. I'll bring it back to the islands for a second. In the 80s, my mother took the very bold step of packing a few bags and traveling from Jamaica to New York City. So, yeah, I see the head nod. So, my older sister and I were the first to do a lot of things in our family. We were the first to finish, well, she was the first to finish college, and then I did, and then I was the first to go off onto continuing my education and going on to law school. So there were a lot of moments where I just didn't know what to do. I didn't know who I could call to ask certain questions. I didn't know anyone who went to law school. And while I was at Fordham, I met some fantastic teachers who were extremely supportive of me, but they also weren't lawyers. So there were a few moments where they would say things like, oh, I know this lawyer who you could reach out to, and maybe she'll help you, or maybe this person will help you. And me being very unclear as to how to navigate those relationships that folks were trying to help me build, I didn't reach out to as many people as I should have. And now looking back, and when I'm talking to interns, and when I'm talking to other people who are trying to forge their own path, I encourage them, as I should have done back then, is to just be bold. And if someone is offering you assistance in some way or guidance in some way, and that might be new to you because the whole entire thing might be scary and it all might seem like it's something that you can't navigate, it's just to take that step out there. You know, there are people who really do want to have a conversation with you and guide you through the process and let you know what they were experiencing. And I think once I tapped into that, like the clouds lifted, and like there were so many people who I could rely on, and I felt that people were rooting for me. Of course, you have your family and everything rooting, and everyone, you know, who loves you rooting for you, but it's when you're speaking about the difficulties of law school that you just touched upon, when you're talking to someone who's been there and who's done it and who has stayed up at night, who probably didn't get the best grade on the exam that they wanted, it's a really different relationship that you can form. So with that lesson that I learned a little bit later than I should have, I would encourage you all to be bold and to make connections, and when you find someone who's genuinely interested in your path of success, for you to just hold on to it and try really hard to just, you know, let that flower and grow, because it can be really awesome. Some folks that helped me through law school, I still talk to them. They still check on me. Like, it's an amazing network to build, so start working on it now.
Okay, thank you. Larry?
How do you follow up all of that, right? I mean, it's a lot of good, what do I have left to say? Nothing. So thank you. No, I took some notes because I think there's a lot of stuff that I can build on and sort of, I can give you my perspective. So my thoughts were this. I wrote, are you ready? Ask for help, have a filter. And let me explain what that means. So I went into the law school process with blinders on. I knew what I was doing. I mean, I went to school with Herline, I went to school with Carrie Ann, so I think you guys have perspectives of me of the way school was. I took 4 years between college and law school because I kept asking myself, are you ready? Are you ready? Are you ready? I knew that when I graduated college, I was burned out. I was tired. I did not want to take another class. I did not want to be part of the school system. I just wanted to be done for a little bit. So I took 4 years, and it scared my parents because I had always discussed going to law school, but I knew, one, that I was tired, and two, this was a costly investment. This is a lot of money, right? And then it's a debt that will, you know, if you have to take out loans, or if you don't, God bless you, but if I took out loans. So I knew this is something that I would need to deal with for a long time. So I needed to make sure that when I went to law school, I 100% was ready to be in law school. And that meant that I had asked all the questions relative to exam taking, that I understood how to do a case brief before I went to law school, that I understood, you know, the Socratic method and what that psychologically does to people. It took me 4 years to say, okay, I think I know what I need to know. I'm ready to go, and let me do this now. So once I got to law school, you know, I kind of had a plan, and the plan was, I knew I wanted to be a labor and employment attorney. I knew that this is an area of the law that I liked, but I didn't want to be sort of myopic about it. So I did expand and learn and take different internships, and I asked for help. And so building on everyone else's points here, the networking component is absolutely important. I asked for help about the process. Am I doing something wrong? Am I doing something better? I just wrote this case brief. Do you mind looking at it and telling me what you think? Just being vulnerable to those experiences opened up a lot of doors, and yes, lifted clouds. But I needed to have a filter. So this is my only sort of addition to what people are saying. Don't take every piece of advice as gospel. You must trust your gut instinct about your career. This is your career. So for what worked for me and what works for Carrie Ann and that works for us, but have a filter. And be critical internally about what you're receiving from other people relative to what you can and cannot do, or how they did something, because it is, when I read your question, it was like, when did you zag? The one time that, when I should have been zigging, I was zagging, is when I listened to people about this concept of big law. So let's talk about big law. So, you know, you get to law school and people say, okay, it's gonna be expensive, but if you get this job at this really great international law firm, you're gonna make all this money, life's gonna be great, and that's where you're going to be, right? So you go into this concept and you're already being fed these notions of like, maybe public interest work isn't something I should do because I'm not gonna make that money, but I need the money, so, and everyone says that that's the only thing that validates me as a lawyer. Bull, okay? 3 years into my career, I actually was very happy at the firm, and I'm still at the same firm. I was very happy at this firm. I had a career path. I knew what I wanted to do. They were giving me a lot of ownership over cases. I was building a client book. Things were moving, and I got recruited by an international law firm. And this firm is the largest firm, management side labor and employment firm in the world, and I said, wow, the big law is what everyone says I should do. So without being sort of critical about, well, why am I doing this? I'm not unhappy, but all right, it's big law. I went, and that was the most miserable year of my life. Not the 3 years of law school. Now, I'll do that 10 more times before I do the foolishness of buying into the concept of big law. The money was great, but they were golden handcuffs. I hated every minute of it. There was no career growth. So think, you're competing with a world of about 1,000 attorneys that are graded on a scale when it comes to raises and promotional advances. I wasn't being critical. So I needed to have, this notion of a filter to me was important, and it guides me to this day. I was fortunate to have the firm that I had left, a mid-sized firm in Long Island, actually contact me in the middle of all this and ask me to come back, and we got into a negotiation. But that is a rarity, and it is a blessing that I know that God gave me. That taught me a lesson. Be critical. Yes, network. Yes, look to the clouds to lift. Do all that stuff. But you guys have gut instincts about what's right for you and what isn't. Let that also guide you.
Thank you all. We haven't even really started yet, and it's already on 10. You guys are getting so much good information. So there's almost nothing to be said, but I just wanted to add my own little piece as well. You know, and everything that the panelists said is completely true in terms of all of the things you should consider when you're going to law school, when you're in law school, when you're about to leave law school, and directly after you leave and you're trying to build that career path. And that goes for any career. So don't just think it's for, you know, being a lawyer, if you're gonna go whatever, graduate school, whatever it is. These are all considerations that you should be making. And one thing I would just add is, don't, like Carrie Ann said, don't be afraid to be bold, and don't be afraid to make choices, like Larry said, that are the best for you, even if no one else understands it. I remember when I graduated law school, I went the route of public interest. I became an attorney with the city, prosecuting neglect and abuse cases. I got great experience. It was a really hard job, but I had an amazing experience there, and I decided though that I wanted to try something different. And you know, at that point, a couple of years into that career, you think, a lot of people are saying, don't do it, you're on the manager track, you can be running this place soon, etc. But I knew that I wanted to try something different, and I branched off and decided to go into immigration law. And then in immigration law, I again decided, I was also at a place where I was like, this is not a good place. I'm not gonna stay here. And I made a decision to then do something completely out of the box. I got a job working doing refugee and asylum work, and I was not being paid for this job. And I had saved, and I knew I was gonna do it, so I saved, I did what I had to do, and I left my firm and I went to live abroad, and I worked abroad for about 3 years doing refugee and asylum work. And a lot of people, in the beginning I wasn't being paid because I'm not rich. I got paid eventually. But in the beginning, especially when I had to tell my parents from the islands, yeah, I'm going to Tanzania for a couple of years, it's fine. No, they're not paying me, but the work is really good. It's great experience. They were like, what? But, and if I had listened to them, I would be in the same place, maybe not happy, maybe not miserable, but maybe not happy either. And I took that opportunity to use that to get as much out of it as I could. And when I came back, the doors just opened up for me because of that experience. Even for places that didn't necessarily have anything to do with what I was doing in abroad, but they just looked at it as, wow, that's interesting. Like, what were you doing there? Why were you there? Like, what did you get from it? So always just be open. Don't think that it's A, B, C, D. Sometimes you just have to just find out where, like, just figure it out yourselves and make your own paths, because that's what you need to do. All right, so we're gonna move on to some targeted questions. We have, like I said, we have a great panelist with people from different sectors, areas. So we're gonna just jump into it with a couple of questions directly towards certain areas. So we're gonna start with the public sector. And we're gonna start with Carrie Ann. So the question is, why did you make the choice to practice in the public sector versus the private?
So I was the kid in the schoolyard who stood up to bullies. Yeah, you too? Good. I was the kid who always got in trouble for speaking out. At this time, I didn't know it was inequality and inequity and discrimination and all these other isms happening in school, but I was that kid that was always demanding fairness and demanding for our classes to have the same and for resources to be shared equally, and I really didn't know what that was about for a while, but as I started to, and Claire Huxtable, can't forget Claire Huxtable. So in thinking about what I wanted to do, I would always think about those experiences and how awesome it made me feel to stand up for folks who are often ignored and who are often forgotten. So in knowing that has always resonated with me and has always made me feel extremely full, that's the main reason why I've decided to represent poor people, predominantly people of color, individuals who are going up against huge systems that they often don't really have a chance against unless they have someone next to them who's well versed in the systems like NYCHA, family court, sometimes the DA's office. But that it just really feels wonderful to be able to do that work, and I knew I always wanted to feel that way, so that in a nutshell is why I decided to find myself in offices that are speaking up for folks who sometimes aren't listened to.
Okay, and Dara, what skills do you believe helped you to be successful in the specific, in your public sector jobs when you were working with that type of clientele?
So I think that the skills that I gained in the private sector for sure helped me in the public sector. And while again, I knew starting my job in the private sector that that's not where I wanted to end up, that was purposeful, and I think that was true because the private sector does have the time and the money to devote to the training. And so I think I learned to be a much better writer than I was when I started working in the private sector, because every single piece of writing, your description of the edited brief, but at the firm where I started, Davis Polk, there are so many levels of supervision, more levels of supervision than I ever thought existed. So you start as a first year, you want to write an email, it is going to be reviewed by someone else and edited with a red pen. You get get it back, you revise it. So we're not just talking about a brief to the court, but every communication was edited and thought about, and every word was discussed. And in the beginning, that was really sort of annoying. I wanted to have a little more autonomy than that. But looking back, I learned a level of practice, especially with regard to writing, but striving really for perfection in writing and excellence in product there, that I then took with me to the public sector, which I think helped, but was also a challenging transition, because in my job in the public sector, I would meet a client and need to file a brief for that client, go to court for that client, maybe the next day. So at the law firm, I might have had 3 months to work on a piece of writing that in the public sector, I had an hour. So it was a little challenge to bring that over, but I still think that starting out with that training helped me to take those skills to work with the clients that I wanted to work with.
Okay, so for both of you, and we'll start with Carrie Ann. So considering what you're saying about some of the challenges or the differences within working with the public sector, where things tend to happen a little faster, you have someone that comes into your office and they're saying, I'm gonna be evicted tomorrow. My child was, taken yesterday. I need to, get him back. Things move a little faster. What are some of the challenges you face working in that field versus any other field? And some practical advice to address those.
So when you give that, when you two talk about the fast-paced nature of the practice, and fast-paced nature in addition to a high-volume caseload is often what you're going to deal with if you go into some sort of public interest job. So what comes to mind instantly is being flexible. And you have to be flexible with so many things. You have to be flexible with your office's abundance of resources or lack thereof, to put it nicely, right? I've interviewed students before, and the interview committee thought it was very funny that I gave an example of, so you don't have a desk today because we're still working on your office situation, but thank you for joining us. How do you respond? And I want to hire the person who is saying, oh, I'm good. I'll work right here. I'll bring my laptop. I'm ready. Let's go. Let's fight the good fight. So I think flexibility is hugely important, and that also comes into play when you expected to achieve X when you walk into court, and then you have to zig, right, and go the other way when you're not getting that, and you have to figure out what's the next best thing that you can argue for quickly. So I think flexibility is hugely important. I think the ability to be creative and to stretch your mind is often not something that we highlight in doing this work, but I think some of my best arguments in court have come from just taking a step back and thinking about things very differently than the folks around me have thought about it, and you can create different solutions that a judge maybe hasn't thought of, and if you present it with strong legal arguments behind it, they just might try it. So I think creativity is also really important. I think no matter where you work, you have to have some ability to be organized and to keep yourself together. There's a lot of responsibility in being a lawyer, right? You have to know what's next. You have to know what's happening tomorrow, and you have to prepare for that. Being an attorney in the public interest world or in big law or with a medium sized firm, even you can't just walk around acting as if things aren't scheduled in advance, and you have to go to meetings and be very prepared. So I think those of you who may need to work on some organization skills to definitely do that, because it's do or die if you can't keep your cases together and your files together. What else? I think being trustworthy is very important. Being able to build rapport with your clients and for them to feel as if you really are concerned with their case is something that could really, really extend far beyond your representation with them. Oftentimes, we're working with individuals who have, for good reason, distrust of different cities and city agencies, and if you can just show them that you're working hard and staying tough with them, that will really go a long way in letting someone open up to you. And I also think specifically with public interest work, you can't do this work in a vacuum. I think if you're afraid to talk about race, gender, ethnicity, class, and how all of that impacts your case or your cases, I think you do a disservice to folks if you're not able to have those open discussions. So I think I could go on and on about skills, but I'll stop there. She'll come back to me.
Yeah. Dara, do you want to add anything to that?
Just trying to think through. No, not on that topic.
All right, we'll come back. All right, so move on to the private sector down there. It's kind of quiet. All right, so for we have Larry and Damani for this question, but we'll start with Larry. What were the factors you considered? You both had experiences where you started in the public sector and then you moved on to the private. So what did you consider when you were making that move?
Me?
Yeah, you decided.
So the primary reason was geography. I was moving out to Long Island, and this firm that I'm currently at is there. But why did I go private? Is I missed people. So my public sector experience was a little different. I worked for the New York City Law Department, and so that agency represents every New York City agency in its role as an employer. So oftentimes, if we all know city agencies, there was a lot of red tape and bureaucracy. Even when you're trying to defend them, it was difficult to meet somebody face to face and get the file and figure out, well, what was the incident? Why did you fire this person? There was a lot of that. I missed what I was missing was being with the client, strategizing collectively what's the best solution for the client's organization, the business, just sort of the back and forth. I'm a people person, and unfortunately my job was, here's the file, there's a summary judgment due in 3 weeks, the person, and I actually did have this, the person that gave the deposition is now dead, so you're gonna have to figure that out, and just win this case. And it wasn't very collaborative, but that was my personal experience, and so I knew that in moving forward, especially continuing being a labor and employment attorney, I needed to be in sort of an environment where maybe I was held accountable by a client, I was held accountable by partners, where it sort of mattered a little bit more than I felt it mattered in the public sector.
Thank you. Damani?
Excuse me. All right, so I'm going to be very candid with my reasons. One was money, and when you're working in the public sector, I think anyone on the panel that did work in the public sector or still does knows that although the work may be very good, may be very rewarding emotionally, it doesn't really sustain you, or it can, but it's very difficult to sustain you for a long period of time in a city like New York. Another reason was I'd always been attracted to certain areas of the law, like commercial litigation, antitrust. I like that level of complexity. I like the intersection of different academic disciplines. It afforded me the opportunity to engage in by practicing those areas of law. And another reason is a bit of a chip on my shoulder, and I wanted to demonstrate to that world that the perverse narrative that is in the legal profession, that attorneys of color aren't skilled enough to do that type of work at that level. I wanted to disprove that and show it as the myth that it is. So those are my 3 reasons for transitioning from public to private.
All right, so for Yvonne, what are some of the realities of working in a private firm? Yvonne owns her own firm, but it's still, whether it's her own or someone else's. I know you also do some work for other attorneys as well, but what are some of the realities that you face as a person who works in the private sector?
So I was just, as I'm listening to Damien, listening to Dara, and to Lara that worked in the private sector, private sector, it's quite different from my private sector because they were working for big firms and they had all of these help. I'm a solo practitioner, so it's quite different. Like Dara said, you write an email and somebody has to review it, another person has to review it. No, I don't get that. So I write my email, I have to review it, I have to do everything. So when you work as a solo, everything is on you. You are your boss, you are your supervisor, you are your clerk, you are your secretary, you are your assistant. Everything is on you. So you have to be ready for it, otherwise you can't do it. So that's one of the realities of working as a solo. Now you control your hours. You you choose your cases. You can do what you want to do. That's part of the benefit, but you also have to do all of the work. Until you get enough that you cannot hire somebody to help take care of the bodies. Otherwise, everything is really, really on you. You have to think about which case do I have tomorrow. Everything has to be written down because there is no case manager reminding you of your cases. There is nobody telling you when a motion is due or when you have to respond to a discovery, what day this has to happen. Everything. Your brain is a calendar because you're literally remembering every case. Your client calls you, they expect you to remember where the last conversation ended like 5 months ago. So you're supposed to pick up from there. When they call, yeah, the last time we spoke, yeah, that was like 5 months ago, and I have so many other cases other than your kid. So, but they expect you to just remember them. They expect you to remember where the last conversation ended and where you're picking it up from. So it's really, really a different reality from when you're working in the big firm where you have all of this help. But like everybody has always said, networking is a big part for a solo practitioner because sometimes you come across certain areas that you really don't have an idea of what to do, or you don't have a template. Your network comes in to help because all you have to do is take your phone and call somebody in your network to say, hey, have you ever done this motion? Oh yeah, can you please send me a template? Yes, they send you something, you know where to start from, rather than going to spend 5-6 hours in the library trying to look for something to use. So something comes up, you don't know what to do, you call somebody. I have been blessed, I have mentors in my areas of practice that I have met, and when I first started, there was no networking in this city that I wasn't going to. Me and my friends, we were going for everything. There is this thing going on, we're going. Now I don't have the time, I got family, I got everything. I hardly have time to do any CLE, any free CLEs, we were there. And because you get to network during those places. Anything the New York Young Lawyers Association were doing, we were there. Because that was how you met other lawyers that were like you, that were in other areas, and other senior lawyers, and you take their cards. I have cards and cards and cards, complimentary cards, and you write their areas of practice on the card so that when you need to call them, you know what areas you need to call them for. And as I've met some mentors that have been with me for years, and I still call them up, and they will tell me, okay, this is what to do, this is how to go about this, and all of that. So the realities of private practice is everything is on you. If you are in my kind of private practice, but if you are in the kind of private practice, you got a lot of help. Okay.
So let's go on to that. Tamani, how is your private practice reality different? What are the realities of being a attorney in a large firm, especially doing the type of work that you do?
It's highly pressurized. It's constant pressure. And the DA's office was pressured too, but it's two different types of pressure. So at the firm, you're talking about a client that has deep pockets, has a lot of money, so a lot of money is always at stake. So whatever brief you're writing, any discovery that you're looking at, any aspect of a case that you're doing for a litigation client at a big firm has some serious economic consequences. The other pressurized point internally at a firm is billable hours. And anybody that worked at a firm knows you have to maintain a certain level of annual billable hours. And it's not an easy thing to do. When you have a lot of billable hours, sometimes you're like, well, wow, I wish I had less. But when you have less, you're getting concerned. Is the work drying up? Are they gonna ask me to leave at some point? So your status at the firm is always a concern. The pressure at the DA's office is, if I don't do this work right, or I don't get this evidence presented to the grand jury, somebody that, no disrespect to people on the defense bar, or that have been there longer than I have, somebody that should be in jail is gonna get out, and that victim is gonna be maybe threatened by that person. That's a different type of pressure.
And Larry, you are not only a practicing attorney in a private firm, you're also a manager. You have some managerial role as well. So what kind of realities do you face having that dual role?
So I am the co-chair of the Labor and Employment Practice Group. There's about 15 attorneys, associates and partners that reports to me and my co-chair, John Farrell. And the reality that I have to deal with is the billable, you talk about billable hours money, it's, following up with, the attorneys, the associates, and ensuring that they're making them. So we're quite fortunate in that the issue of the work being there and drawing up, we've had long-standing clients and we've done pretty well. The question is, because we're in a mid-sized law firm, we sell what big law doesn't really do or they do lip service to, which is quality of life. But there is an issue with quality of life. You can take it too far, and then you're not making your billable hours, and then the revenue isn't being generated. Billable hours are a revenue generating concept. And so that's my dual role. So not only am I reviewing the work product that's being put out there, I'm reviewing with the red pen the emails, and sometimes 2 or 3 times, but I'm also thinking bottom line. All right, so how much are we billing this client? What are the profits that we're gonna get from here? Are they making realization? Have we met our LY numbers as a group in terms of contribution to the firm? So I'm thinking dollars and cents. I'm thinking sort of legal strategy and how to make the email process easier so that doesn't amount to another unnecessary billable hour.
And so, to Damani and Larry, if you have a student someone who's in Berkeley College looking for an internship, or if you have a law student looking for an internship.
We already have some volunteers for that.
So what would you say would be some skills that you would look for in a person, or skills that you're still trying to develop in yourself to make yourself the best attorney in your field in this private practice area? You can start with Damani.
I would say, like I mentioned before, writing. Get as much writing experience as you can, and if you demonstrate to any prospective employer, be it a law firm, solo practitioner, that look, you've at least attempted your hand at some legal writing, I think that goes a long way. Now, the way firms like mine, firms like Dara's former firm, look at it, being honest with what I said before, and I hate saying this, it's just the truth. It's about the grades, and it's about certain accolades in law school, like law review, or you in a law journal. My problem with that is this. A law journal and law review demonstrates, okay, look, you have good enough writing ability to elevate to that level in law school, but you are not gonna be writing like that once you get to a Davis Polk, once you get to a Shepard Mullen, because that writing is not advocacy. And that's a bit of a tangent into something I wanna discuss later in the panel about some of the inadequacies of law school in terms of transitioning from a law student to a lawyer. And that, we may not even have time for that, because there's a lot I could say about that. But to answer Perlene's question, I would say I would look for somebody that has tried their hand at writing, that writes well, is improving their writing, and has a story to tell. And when I say a story to tell, a story of overcoming something. Like, listen, I struggled with this, and I overcame this by doing X, Y, or Z, or all 3. But that to me is compelling, because it shows, like, listen, I wasn't spoon-fed this skill set. I didn't know, my father didn't know this judge or that partner or hiring partner at a law firm, and that's how I got here. That doesn't impress me. I'm just speaking for me right now. Somebody that has a story of overcoming something, of hardship and triumph, and said, you know what, no, I'm moving forward, and I want this, for whatever reason, I want to be at a big firm, and they get there, that person is going to get my attention more so than somebody that says, oh, well, my father or my mother, my uncle's a lawyer, that's all I've seen, and they knew the hiring partner at this firm. I stopped listening at that point.
Larry?
So in addition to the other stuff that I do, I run our firm's summer associate program, as well as do lateral recruiting, which means that we look to hire attorneys. A lot of them come from McLaughlin, since they're going to a medium-sized firm. And so I've conducted enough interviews, and I did about 147 as of last week so far, between September and now. I cannot agree with you more. And what my point is to stand out, there needs to be something more than the referral from some judge friend that your dad has. In fact, that does turn me off as well, and I do shut down. But here's the additive. I feel that there's this narrative out there that when you go to have an interview, whether it's big law or firm, or there's this front that you have to put up, and you have to sort of sound like you know, the Erie Doctrine, and you're prepared to talk about it, and like all this nonsense that you're supposed to sound lawyerly. One thing that the legal profession doesn't do in law school is remind everyone that we're still human. Don't lose your humanity. Bring your personality to the interview. Okay, let us know who you are. Is it your struggle? Is it where your parents came from? Those things are the things that when I'm thinking of hiring, I think to myself, our clients connect with the attorneys based on their personality as much as they do based on their legal acumen. And what that means is if you come in and you have a story, you have background, you're human, you're comfortable about talking about your experiences, you're vulnerable, you're funny, you're gonna succeed and you're gonna stand out. So out of 147 interviews, I can tell you the ones that stood out, because those are the ones that did those very small things.
Really, can I just add something on that? Just in terms of, interviewing and how to set yourself up to present the best. So while at Sanctuary, I did a ton of interviewing and hiring, and I have two things to say about that I think are relative to you guys. One is that you have to know where you're interviewing. So if you are interviewing at an organization and you go in and someone asks, why do you want to work here? You have to know something about that organization. And what you should know about that organization is whatever that organization cares about. Whatever they think is great about themselves, you need to know that. Because when you go to interview somewhere and you say, well, I just want to do this area of law. I don't care where it is, I would just like to do this. That's not going to be a good interview, okay? Even if it's true, find out what this place does. Find out what the law firm, maybe the law firm, if you read all of their literature, what they keep talking about are the people who work there. There are law firms like that. Mine is one of them, okay? Yes, they have great clients and they're ranked this and they're ranked that. You're not gonna read that as much in their literature as their culture. They care a lot about their culture. No one yells there. It's a very nice place to work. And they care about that, they care about the people, and that is what you will read in their literature. So if you go to interview there and you've read their website, you know that, and when they say, why do you wanna work at Davis Polk, as opposed to these other 10 firms that are sort of exactly the same, you don't wanna say, well, I'd be happy to work at any of these places. That's not the right answer, right? You need to know something about that place. So that's one. The second is that, while I thought that, while I was in law school, I felt like grades were the most important thing, the only important thing, and what was gonna guide my entire legal career. What I then realized hiring later is, I never looked at people's grades when I looked at people's materials. So when people were applying for jobs at Sanctuary, I did not get their grades, I did not look at their grades. I did not care about their grades. And what mattered then was, what had they done? Where had they worked before then? What did they say in their cover letter? To me, that cover letter was everything. First of all, are there tons of typos in the cover letter? Everyone is capable of not having typos, it's just a matter of being careful. So that was first and foremost to me. I don't care if you got straight A's in law school if you're gonna give me a cover letter with 10 typos in it. Because the question then is, how are you presenting? What are you saying, and how careful is your work product? So how careful were the materials presented, but also just, who's the person? What's their story? Are they passionate about doing the job they want to do? Do you like the person who came to interview with you? Or, if you're trying to just fit into a box, you're going to present really boring in an interview and no one's going to want to hire you. So I completely agree with the be yourself, obviously within reason, right? We all know, there's a certain level of, how we have to act in an interview, but be yourselves, tell your story. And I really believe that, yes, the first job, your grades matter, for sure. That first job out of law school is all about your grades and where you went to law school. But don't despair if the grades aren't so great and you can't get the first job that you want, because after that, from someone who hired people who are after that level, no one's looking at the grades. And I would much rather, when I was hiring, have hired people from law schools that were not the top law schools. The people who were in the middle of their top law school, I would much rather have hired someone from a law school that was ranked lower, who really worked hard there and succeeded there, or who went to a college that was not as highly ranked college and worked hard and succeeded there. I would hire that person any day over the person who just, you know, went to this great school and did okay and didn't work that hard, and I didn't want that person working there, so.
I'd just like to pick up on that.
Yeah, please.
By Dara, in terms of grades and presentation of yourself and experience. That's where the internship, I think, matters a lot, because then you get to develop as a person and how to present yourself as a person. That means a lot when you go into an interview. And the grades, yes, they do matter on some level, but basically after you get your foot in the door in that first job, the grades, they matter somewhat, but not as much as who you are, who you've become, what you bring to the table. I know the person who's my mentor, my first job in the judicial system, I was in the old days, it's called the hearing examiner. We did support and paternity in different cases in certain categories. And one of the things I was concerned about was my grades. But you know, I had enough experience in performing different things, and I had enough of a resume that could show that I could do the work. And I was hired. And then, of course, when I applied to become appointed as a family court judge, I was again concerned about my grades. Nobody even looked, you know, because I fully expected, well, what happened here, you know? Nothing. And that's the thing. If you are efficient in your practice, efficient in the experience and what you bring to the table, you have the tools that somebody wants to hire you for their particular firm, really that matters. So therefore, you have to go out and develop yourself as a whole person, not just a grade student. There are a lot of A students, straight A students, who aren't working because they haven't developed their skills. So you're talking about a whole person when you're coming to apply for a job. You put your grades on the table, and they say, okay, well, what can you do for me? And if all you have to show are your grades, that all these years you've been practicing and you've not developed any of the necessary skills, writing and things like that, you're not going to get hired no matter how great a student you were. So I'm just saying this to say, don't be dissuaded by if you don't have the top grades. Grades do matter, but grades are not the be all and end all. And just as an aside, I'm so tickled here when I hear about emails and things like that. When I started, we didn't even have computers. we had top of the line typewriters. I don't know if folks know typewriters. You know, so we didn't have any of that stuff. And really, whiteout came late. You know, when you took the white, no, we got to erase and all this stuff. So, or just start all over again. So I'm just so tickled when I hear about emails and things like that. When I was in Brooklyn Family Court, and you probably been there, crazy place. I remember when we went, we had computers installed. All the wires are coming out of the ceilings and into the courtroom because the building was not made for that. So I remember we had the day when we were going to turn on the computers. So at a certain time, everybody in every courtroom office had to turn on the computers, and the whole idea was to see if the system was going to blow out because we put all these computers on. It didn't blow out, and there we were. We went digital, but and that was probably in the late '90s, something like that. So. I'm just tickled when I hear this because this was not my experience in the beginning.
I remember getting
and Ms. Gilman has appeared before me
many times
when we were practicing. And
I remember getting these files, and some of the cases are very old because they just kept reoccurring with the respondents, the parents who had cases filed against them. And I would get files, and there would be carbon copies inside, and I'm like, what?
Not about carbon, that's right.
How is this? Like, what is this? So, but to piggyback off what you mentioned, Judge Gosner, you mentioned the skills that you think are grades are not the end all be all, and that there should be some other skills that you bring to the table. So what do you think are the skills that you were most reliant on when it came time for you to decide to pursue being a judge? What did you think was the things that you really focused on?
Well, by that point in my career, I'd done a lot of writing, legal writing of many different types, and I've spent basically my whole career in family law, and I just love the area of the law. So, as weird as it sounds, I still like reading the Family Court Act, and you're right. And it you have to have a love for what it is you do, so that when you go in the courtroom, if you're a trial lawyer, that you have this knowledge. There are so many attorneys that have appeared before me that don't know the basic Family Court Act. How are you going to come to family court and don't know the Family Court Act? So you have to be, I guess what I'm saying is you have to be prepared for what it is you're going to do. You have to be able to think on your feet, because when you're a trial lawyer, things happen. Things happen, and that's what I mean by experience. You can't stand there and have a blank look on your face. You have to say something. And it has to make sense, at least at the moment.
There's that.
I don't know. It's just, for me, it was. I think I've always been a great listener, and that's probably one of the most, or if not, it's the most important thing that I do. I listen to people. I listen and I observe people, and that alone has been so interesting to me, because in the family court there's no jury, so the judge makes all decisions about credibility, decisions about law. And how do I do that? I listen. You listen to everybody. There was a point in my career, not so much now, but I could remember testimony on every case months ago, and because listening, it's in there. So when you see the person, and you have all types of witnesses, I just love to listen and watch people. And I found that was one of the things I loved the most about being a judge, was that, I could never watch legal shows on TV after I became a judge, because it just wasn't real. You watch these shows and I'm sitting there, oh no, this doesn't happen. Then I just stopped because it wasn't real. But when you get in that courtroom, for me, the skill of listening and observing was the most important to me. And law firms will talk to their clients about their appearance, how they speak, different things like that, because that makes a difference, in how a witness may present themselves in court. But the thing is, you can't fake it. You can't fake it. If you're in a courtroom and I'm listening to you and I'm observing you, you can only fake it for so long, and then you're gonna be found out. And I just loved it. I just loved it, that part of the being a judge. The decision making, that was okay too, but I just loved watching people and listening, and that was a turning point in my career when I got into the judicial system. That was something I found that I love to do. And I get up in the morning, and I just love to go to work. I love to go to work. I didn't take sick days. If I could get out the door, even if I was sick, I went to work, because every person is different. All of you are different. And if we sat down and talked and listened, you pick up things. So that was like an incredible part of the job in making these decisions. And I don't think it would be the same if I was in a different court, because I have to be judge and jury. I think it adds a little something more to how I pay attention to the ebb and flow, what people are saying, and facial expressions, different things. I mean, it was just a great time. I still enjoy it now. That's the aspect I think I enjoy a lot. And like I said, I enjoy reading. You have to enjoy, well, you don't have to depending on one's motivation, but if you enjoy the area of law you're in, I mean, I think that makes all the difference in the amount of effort you put in, how you are able to progress professionally. Because let's face it, if there's something that you don't like, there has to be something that motivates you to do that. Now, it may be money, it may be different things, but you have to find what it is you like to do. Because then I think you're gonna do the best job. And I can't echo it enough. Internships, networking, things like that make such a difference in how you develop. You know, you meet people in other areas of law, you observe, go to court, things like that. My first time in family court, I was a law student, and I'd interview potential clients, and they'd come and I'd say, well, what happened in court? And some of them literally did not know. They said, well, I went to this room, people were yelling, they handed me these papers and said, come back on such and such a day. And as a law student, you have these ideas about, these idealistic thoughts about how the law works. But when I went to Brooklyn Family Court for the first time, I saw how chaotic it could be. I mean, Brooklyn Family Court, I don't know if it is now, but it's still one of the busiest courts in the whole nation. And things move fast. And that was one thing that encouraged me, that I felt pulled towards, was that, you know, what good are rights if you don't know what happened? And that was one of the things that pulled me towards this kind of work. I said, well, you know, we have to make sure that people understand what the process is about. You know, what good is it to go to court to try to assert rights if you just don't know what happened in court the first day? So that's sort of what pulled me into, first of all, getting into public sector and then progressing from there. So, and you know, we called it organized chaos in family court. And you know, but anyway.
Thank you. All right, so for the solo practitioner, the woman that does it all, what would you say you wish you knew before you started your own firm?
Billing. I wish I knew so much about billing. Like they said, in private big firms, billable hours is the best thing. It's all they teach you how to do all that, you know. But as a private, I came out of, I worked for smaller firms all this while. So, you know, they do billing, but it's not that crazy. And when I started my practice, I'm still struggling with billing. I have people who owe me money because I've not sent out my invoice for them. And that's money that I'm losing because I am not sending out my bills. So I've had to invest in softwares to help me with billing and all of that. But it is still a struggle because, like I said, it's a one-man show. So I am going to courts, I'm coming back to write notes, and then I have to have time to put in the hours and start the billing. It's like, okay, we'll push that to the back when I have time, but that's my money, okay? And I don't want to do that because I'm losing money, okay? Because when my money is out there, I'm not getting it in my account, and that is not good for business, you know? So I wish I knew so much on billing before I started. I'm very sure I will be very rich right now. and of course, time management. I have to learn, I had to really learn that, how to prioritize my work and how to get things done at the not at the last minute, at the time it's supposed to be done, so that I'm not sleeping, I'm not in the office till 2 a.m. because I have to file by 8 a.m. the next morning, by 10 a.m. the next morning. I've had 2 months to have done this. Why wait till the last minute to do it? Because when I wait till the last minute, I don't get it done properly. I'm just putting something in so like I filed it, you know. So that was some challenges for me, and that I wish I knew so well before I started practice.
And so what would you say are some of the benefits
So like I said before, I've had the opportunity of being able to choose my cases. I've had people come for consultation and the story, and I just couldn't relate with them, you know. Like I think Damian, Dara said before, your personality helps as well. So there are sometimes cases come to you, you just don't feel it. You know you're not really going to be able. I do immigration and family matrimonial. So if you understand this area, these are very personable areas. You're really relating with somebody, you're really talking. So it's not like corporate, where you're really dealing with the money, you're not dealing with the individual. You know, you're dealing with paperwork, you're not seeing somebody. But these areas, you're seeing a person, you're walking, you're talking with a person. So I've had cases where after consultation, I just knew I couldn't do it. Because one, maybe I didn't believe their story so well, or I just knew I was not the best fit for them as an attorney. I've had to tell them, I'm sorry, I can do it. Or, you know, I've seen cases come to me and I just know, like, I'm putting everything down for this case. We're gonna work on this, we're gonna do this case. I'm gonna be with you. You know, it's like I'm taking up your burden on me to go out, because why? I just really feel passionate about this case, about this person, and I feel like this is injustice. We can get you, we can help you get this, we can help you do this, you know, don't worry, you know. And that's one of the things as a solo, because when the people come, they want to feel comfortable with you. I told a friend the other day, I say, as an attorney, I'm also a psychiatrist, because I'm having to talk to clients, you know, they call you and they just want to vent. I have to listen. I can't tell them, I'm in a hurry, okay, get to the point, no. Because sometimes your client, just because of the kind of area that I practice, you have to understand and just let them speak and let them talk and just tell them, don't worry, it's gonna be okay. They just want that reassurance from you. And so that's something for me. So I get to learn, I've learned to choose my cases. Of course, my hours are mine, you know. It's not like I have to talk to somebody. Like today I was in Queens in the morning, then I went to Berkeley, and then I'm here. So it's like I've been all over the place. You know, if I don't have cases, if I can see my schedule is free, I can say, you know what, today I'm just gonna stay at home. Like my sister would say, oh, the benefit of owning your home practice. But yeah, but then the work is waiting for me the next day. So if I take today off, I have double to do the day after that. But you know, I think for me that's part of it. And of course, when the money do come, it's all mine.
Damani, as a private attorney, we said a lot of people, they look at television shows and they see the big corporate attorney in the nice suit, and maybe they don't realize the work that goes on behind the scenes. So why don't you tell us about a realistic day in your life? What are some of the things that you would be dealing with on a regular basis to present yourself as the complete and great private attorney?
Okay. Is anyone here familiar with the TV show on USA Network called Suits? Okay, it's nothing like that. I mean, really, it's probably diametrically opposed to that. So, a day in the life would be probably writing a brief. And I know we use the term brief a lot, but a brief could be a motion to dismiss. We're defending somebody in a trade secrets case, for example, and there's a complaint filed, and we think the complaint is insufficient for any reasons that we can come up with under state law, federal law, common law, and we'll be writing a brief, a motion to dismiss. A lot goes into that, and a lot of case law research and writing, and you're kind of editing your own writing as you're writing the brief, and it goes sort of up the chain through checkpoints. It'll go through a senior associate, it'll go through a partner, and once it's approved, hopefully well in advance of the filing date, it gets filed. If I'm not writing a brief, I may be doing discovery, which is essentially document review, which is the bane of most associates' existence. The benefit of it, it gives you a lot of billable hours, but it's extremely boring and very tedious. You're literally looking at a client's documents and determining, is this responsive based upon the discovery parameters that have been set between counsel? Is it non-responsive? Is it a hot document? A hot document is a document that could be very beneficial to the client insofar as it shows, wow, this piece of evidence right now shows that we have the best case, we have the best argument, Or it can go the other way. It's very negative insofar as we could lose this if we produce this particular document. So that's a bit of a snapshot of the day in the life. But to Larry's earlier point, which I think he eloquently made, it's about billing when you're at a private firm. And the billing and billable hours, that's the mechanism through which revenue is generated to any firm. And most of the billing comes through the associates. The partners are generally out there generating business, doing a lot of business development, they do some legal work, but a lot of it falls on the associates. So the expectation is, well, you need to meet these annual billable hours so we can continue to pay you the salary that you're getting paid, and we continue to pay everyone else the salary that they're getting paid. To the extent that you're not, you're in a very uncomfortable position, because then the question becomes, are your billable hours not what they're supposed to be because the work is drying up, or people are not trying to work with you? And, you know, to Larry's earlier point too, that's one of the reasons why working in big law can be the bane of anyone's existence. So him talking about that being the worst year of his life, I get it. I get it every day. It's not for the faint of heart. I can say that much.
Thank you. Okay, so Carrie Ann, you went from practicing in family court and other courts and being a clerk for a judge into now you are in a sort of non-traditional legal career in terms of being a training officer for legal aid. So what would you say is some advice on how to make that move, or yeah, any advice on making that move from a traditional to a non-traditional?
So I'll be honest and say when I saw the posting, I hesitated a bit because it was I could tell from the description that there wouldn't be much room, at least in the beginning, to take on cases and to continue to do a big part of what made me very happy being in court, dealing with clients, having trials, writing motions, arguing with judges, all of that. So I took a pause and thought about whether or not I really wanted to take a leap into doing the applying for the job, and I actually am very happy and excited that I did, because I think all of the success that I had in family court really set me up to be a trainer that really understands the staff that we have and the needs that we have. And I also think it allows the staff that I work with to see and to hear us. I train with other people often, but we try to often put in our personal stories into the trainings that we run. And when we're doing things like evidence and trial techniques, it's really important to share with folks that, you know, on the first day of trial, I was sweating, I was nervous, I was afraid. I was telling my supervisor, do we have to go in there? Like, I'm not ready, like, I just need to breathe. So those things happened, and I think being someone in this role who was straight up and honest about that and letting them know that that happened and it will happen, and if you reach out and you talk to your supervisor and you let them know what nerves you have about preparing for, let's say, your first big trial or something, and you work with them in collaboration, you'll be able to learn a lot from that trial and walk away with some bit of success. You may or may not get the outcome that you wanted, but maybe you bought your client 6 more months in an apartment and they're not going to be evicted, and their children don't have to go into a shelter or something like that. So I think that being someone who had so many cases and had so many different experiences in family court, that without even knowing it, I was really well set up to do this type of job and to take on the trainings. And I'm naturally someone who doesn't feel as if I know everything, so there's no question that's a silly question in our training rooms and in our environments, because we're all coming from a place of learning. And I think imparting that specifically to when we're having supervisor trainings and we talk about, we don't ever want the folks who are supervising at the Legal Aid Society to become the supervisors who say things like, oh, how come you don't know this? because then we have to remind you that you didn't know it at some point. So just remember that when working with new staff, that everything is a learning process, and the people who I think are more effective in court are the people who, I think someone said it earlier, who are not afraid to say, oh, I don't know this, let's look it up together, let's learn together. So I think that worked well. And I think, I guess the last point I'll make is, it made sense after a while, after I talked about it a little bit and asked around about what folks were really looking for in the role, and I think your reputation precedes you, right? And I was very, I guess, impressed with myself. That you should always be impressed with yourself. That the folks who were interested in me, at least just throwing my hat in the ring for the job, just knew that I was an effective advocate. I was an advocate that really connected with my clients, and I was someone who enjoyed teaching others and tried to make that teaching process easy and non-judgmental, and in teaching, reminding folks that you have to take care of yourself, you have to make time for your family. So I think without knowing it, the job description was something that kind of spoke to me. So those are many of the reasons why I ended up in this role. And I will also just add that I don't think I was even aware that this position was out there. So I think it brings us back to the conversations we've had about mentoring and networking, and someone may see something and then call you up and say, I actually did that today with someone. I saw a position and called a friend and said, you need to apply to this, it closes next week. So I will say I didn't wake up saying, today I'm going to apply to be the director of training of the Legal Aid Society. It kind of meshed in a very interesting way. So I think those are the points that are important about my transition.
Great, thank you. So I want to leave enough time for questions. So we're going to just wind down a bit, and I'd like each panelist to briefly.
We're all attorneys.
I know.
We're all verbose.
We're all like point one. No, so as briefly as possible. Let's give a final thought, and the final thought can be anything you think is something that you'd want to have heard again in this position, if you were the student sitting out there, or thoughts on the law school process. I know a lot of people are going to make that transition soon. So any of the one thing you think you'd want to know if you were sitting out there. Okay, so let's start with Yvonne.
So, when I was in school, back in Nigeria, our school program is a 5-year course. So it's not a 3 years here, it's a 5 years you have to spend. And at the end of the 5th year, during our law book, or we're doing our yearbook and everything, so they'll ask you, what did you wish you could have changed? And a classmate of mine said, I wish I was not a lawyer. After 5 years, she said, I didn't want to be, I wanted to be a journalist, but my uncle who was sponsoring me told me if I'm not a lawyer, he won't sponsor me. So she was forced into doing this, and after 5 years, she still regrets doing that. So don't do that to yourself. Know what you want to do and go for it. So don't go to law school and have all of this loan and then come back to say, I wish I didn't do that. So take your time. Like Lara said, it took 4 years to figure out if this is really what he wanted to do. If you are not very sure, there's so many other fields out there that you will wake up in the morning and you'll be happy to go to work. Don't do something that just because everybody say you can do it, you should do it, or everybody else is going into it, I want to go into it. If you're Nigerian, you know your parents. If you're not a lawyer, you're not a doctor, you're not an engineer, you're not an accountant, you didn't do anything. You went to school to play. So that's their way. Oh, mommy accountants, mommy lawyer, mommy, they're very happy. Well, mommy biologist, who is that? So that's, if you're from African parent home, that's what they say. So those are the areas that they only feel like those are the professions that it's it's all about the chip on the shoulder, but it's really what you want. So I'll tell you, go for what you want. Be interested in what you want to do, so that when you wake up in the morning, you're happy to go to work. But at the end of the day, make sure there's money in it. Thank you.
Yeah, I agree with everything Yvonne said, and just to piggyback off of that, if you want to become a lawyer, I'll say this: be sure that this is what you want to do, and I can't stress that enough. This is not an easy road. It's not an easy path. Understand what your motivation is to come here and to come to this side. If your motivation is principally economic, do not do this. And I can't stress that enough. Don't. If it's about finance and you think, oh, I'll make a lot of money as a lawyer, you are wasting your time. And you're wasting your money going to law school for 3 years. It's not worth it. However, if you do have a passion for some area of the law, whether it be public interest, prosecution, or it's something on the corporate side, then absolutely go and do that. But then get a mentor. And as the panelist was saying, that your network is extremely important. But your mentor and mentorship is critical to your success, both in law school and in your career. One thing I will say about law school, if you do decide to do so, I do think law school does a pretty big disservice to a lot of incoming students. And I say that because they advertise this very high employment rate after graduation. What they don't tell you is a lot of those people that are employed, because there are a finite number of jobs on this side, a lot of the people that are employed in positions that did not require a JD. That's not all schools, but it's enough. The other issue I have with law school is they don't do a good enough job really preparing law students to be lawyers. On my side, it's just as a litigator, I can't really say that law school and its academic process of issue spotting during law school exams, which is a skill set that is useful, but did it necessarily prepare me to deal with some of the procedural issues and some of the other substantive issues I deal with as a litigator? It did not. And I just want everybody that's actually gonna do this to be aware of that. Don't think that, all right, I went to this great law school, I did great there, I'm ready to be a great lawyer. No, you're not until you actually practice. But to those in the audience that really are passionate about this and wanna do it, go with God. And I will definitely give Colleen my contact information. Y'all can contact me anytime. I'll be more than happy to.
Thank you. So, I mean, my closing thought is similar as well. I think the law is wonderful. I loved law school. So, I hated the exams, hated them, was a complete wreck after every exam. Absolutely thought I failed every exam, which I learned is because we all failed every exam because they're all graded on a crazy curve. So everyone fails, and it's a question of how badly you failed. You can fail not so bad, you get an A, so everyone fails. So they're built to make everyone feel like you fail every exam because you do. That's not what I'm going to talk about, though. What I wanted to talk about was that I love being a lawyer. I love going to my job every day. What I love about it is being able to really change people's lives in obvious ways and really meaningful, sort of life or death, keeping families together sort of ways. And what I think is so important is that so many people have careers in the law that they don't like. I know, so I still work at Davis Polk, but in a very different capacity. So I see many people who hate their jobs. Many people in big law firms, young associates, hate their jobs. So I think more people in big law firms hate their jobs than like their jobs. And a lot of people do it just because, well, that's what you do, or, but I could get the job and it pays well, so I'm gonna go to it. It doesn't sustain you, and those people will leave. What I think is so important is thinking in each job about what you really liked about that job and what you didn't like about that job. Because even if you hate the job, there's something about it, probably, even if it was a miserable job, there's some aspect of it that you liked or some reason you went there. When you look for the next job, try to take with you what you liked from that job and leave behind what you didn't. And for me, that's brought me starting at Davis Polk, leaving Davis Polk, working in the public sector, and I'm back at Davis Polk, but I don't do billable work, but I get paid like I do billable work, but all I do is work for our clients for free. So I now do public sector work in the private sector, but I get paid by the private sector. So I think I have a really good job now, but it worked because I left Davis Polk. I couldn't have this job before. I wouldn't have gotten this job before. I wasn't qualified to have the job I have now. I'm only qualified because I left. I worked in the public sector. I got the experience I needed to then be hired back as someone with expertise in the area they needed to work at my firm and supervise people on these pro bono matters that we do in family law and immigration. Now I do that at a firm, but it's come full circle, and I did that by saying, what did I love about this job? What did I love about my job at Sanctuary? What did I still like about my job at Davis Polk? There was something that started me there. I was a person who liked working in that sort of environment. I really liked having all the resources at the firm, but I didn't really care as much about those cases and those clients. But now I get to use those resources to care about the clients to use for the clients I care about. So you will find your path. Don't be afraid to leave. So many lawyers are afraid to leave their jobs, and they stay for years at jobs they don't like. There are so many different things to do, and each job leads to another, and a job you dislike is not a failure. It just is a job that wasn't right for you, but leads you to a job that is more right for you.
Thank you. And
I echo everything that the other panelists have stated. It is, I have 3 adult children now, and people always ask me, well, didn't you encourage them to go to law school to become a lawyer? I said, no, because they have to figure out what it is they're going to enjoy doing. And just because I became a lawyer and then became a judge, that doesn't mean that's their path. Doesn't mean it's your path. That's why I keep saying internships. Internships allow you to see various aspects of the law, see it in action. I mean, you all have your own personalities, and sometimes personalities aren't suited to do certain things. Everyone cannot be a litigator. There's someone who likes to work alone, maybe do research or review documents. But the only way you're going to know that is by at least get some hint about it is internships and getting out there and seeing this in action. I encourage people to come sit in the courtrooms. Just sit there and look and watch. Family court is now open, so you can go to any family court, sit in any courtroom, and watch and see what goes on. There are many aspects of the legal practice besides being a lawyer that you may enjoy. So get experience. And I don't mean you have to have hands-on all the time, but observe, talk to people, and then sometimes have the hands-on, because it makes a difference. When you think about a working career, it's 30, 40 years, and if you feel trapped in something that you're not suited for, you're gonna have a horrible life. I feel very blessed to have been encouraged by a credible mentor to go the route I went, because I've really enjoyed the last 30 or so years of my life going in this career. So, I mean, that made the world a difference. So, and that's the thing about networking, meet different people, because sometimes you can't see what you're suited for. Sometimes you have these ideas planted in your head by parents. I was supposed to be a doctor. And you may not be suited for that. So you need to get input from credible people who have spent time with you, who may have worked with you, and they can see your talents and abilities maybe that you can't see. Certainly give you things to think about. So just get out there. Get in the offices, get in the courtrooms, and just observe. And don't be afraid to talk to people. I think anybody in the courtroom in family court, if you go to a lawyer and you want to talk to them, they'll talk to you. I mean, some of them won't, but most will. Most will, and you'll get an idea about what they do, Like the city agencies, the prosecuting agencies, they have internships and things like that, so just get out there and do it. And, you know, as time allows, I think that makes a big difference in the trajectory of your career, the decisions you make, things like that. Don't be miserable for 20, 30 years and afraid to leave a job because, you know, it's like, what's somebody gonna do, you know? That's a horrible thing.
Thank you. So by nature, I could make like 85 closing remarks, but only one, maybe two, clearly. Make it brief. So I think everything that has already been said is really important for you all to take away. I think there's so many strong points that I really wish I heard before going down this road. But I think what lawyers are coming around to now that you all could possibly start doing even earlier than we have is really just understanding the notion of self-care and what that means in your practice and what that means in your professional life, no matter what you end up doing. For those of you in the room who may or may not end up going to law school and practicing law, I think lawyers have a lot of work to do in understanding that we need to value ourselves. We need to have cutoff times at the end of the day so we can be with family and friends. We need to prioritize our weekends and being able to do something other than work, and it's not always possible. I've prepped for trial on a weekend. I've prepped late at night working on an order to show cause, which is an emergency filing with a client. We've worked around their schedules in ways that you are staying in your office later than is probably healthy to do. But I think the important thing to remember is when you do that, you need to think about the balance, right? If you had to prep for a trial and you were late in the office Tuesday and Wednesday, then you need to figure out something to do Thursday and Friday to revitalize yourself, a family member that you need to go and visit, something fun and exciting that you want to do for yourself to bring yourself joy and to keep yourself sane. It's not to scare you all the way from law school, but I've unfortunately known a lot of attorneys who get really sick from carrying these heavy caseloads for a very long time and not taking care of themselves and not going to the doctor and not prioritizing their bodies. So I think my office is really awesome in trying to have those conversations with our staff from the day of hire and onward. But I'm going to admit and say that I think lawyers are late to the game with that. So I hope that you all remember that and take that with you no matter what field you end up going into. You just have to really, really prioritize keeping yourself well, keeping your mind strong, and practicing self-care.
Thank you.
It took all my time, so I have no time to reclaim some of my time carrying. No,
30 seconds.
So I will do this in under 30 seconds. For me, the thing that I wish I knew in law, before going into law school was that the practice of law is a combination of cultivating a legal acumen and legal knowledge, learning that damn Erie doctrine, but also it's a customer service business. And it's about selling yourself to a customer. And that customer could be the client with the deep pockets, or it could be the partner who won't give you any work because he doesn't like you, or it could be your client in the public sector who's being evicted tomorrow. You need to recognize that this practice isn't just Law and Order or Suits, which should be canceled by this point because it's a horrible show. It's more than these shows, this nonsense that you see on TV. There is heart, there is humanity in it, and you have to tap into that. And if you think that law school is just learning things, then it's only half the game. So I wish somebody would have told me that because I learned that late in the game as well.
Thank you. I will quickly add mine since you were so brief.
That was my time, right?
Right? No, right? No, just everything everyone said, plus there's no one way to be a lawyer. There's no one way to practice. There's no one type of law to practice. Some lawyers wear suits and go to court. Some lawyers sit in a room and read case law. Some lawyers direct agencies. Some lawyers don't practice at all and they find a way. I just say, don't get stuck in the idea that there's only one way to do it, and be open to that if you do go to law school, okay? All right, so, we're gonna open it up to some questions. Don't be shy. Danielle.
I knew it was gonna be.
I know. And we have a one question limit. I'm gonna come back to you so you could think about which of these questions you're gonna.
I want the judge first.
Okay.
I'm question for the judge.
Okay.
Hi, guys. Okay, first thing first, I'm Danielle Aline. I will be graduating Berkeley in May with honors. How about that? So, real quick, I want to thank everybody here for coming to Berkeley. Yeah, we're not a CUNY school, but we're up there with everybody else. I've gotten really bad reviews from people who have gone to CUNY schools, henceforth why I'm here. This is not my first go around with Berkeley. I've been with Berkeley since 2011. I actually left, came back, worked as an actress on these TV shows and movies I filmed here in New York. 4 years, got bored of doing that, decided let me go back to school and work on my degree to become an attorney, like I started with Berkeley to become a corporate lawyer. Working in the entertainment field, I realized let me change that to become an entertainment lawyer instead. So, Judge, I got a question for you. Thank you so much. I mean, don't get me wrong, you guys. I have to say one thing. All of you guys look so miserable and sad. So I don't know what's going on there. I'm gonna try to smile. You guys are really making me afraid to become that attorney. Thank you. Right? You guys are making me feel like this is a miserable job to have. So now, judge. So you've been a judge for like a lot of years. I want to know. I'm doing my internship now with the attorney Suzette Morales. I actually have her card. I will be giving it to you, as well as I need every one of your cards. Thank you. How did you transition from being a lawyer to a judge? And how long did it take for me? I was thinking about becoming a judge, so how long am I going to have to practice law to become what you are now?
Thank you.
Well, the easy part is for family court and the other courts too, on the state and city level, because it's called the New York City Family Court, although it's a state court. You have to have 10 years admitted to the bar, or 10 years licensed. That's an easy way to say it before you can apply to be a judge. Now, certain judgeships in New York are appointed, such as family court is appointed by the mayor. That's within New York City. Outside New York City, you run for election. But other judgeships, Supreme Court, Civil Court, things like that, are elected positions, so you actually campaign for your positions. And, you get elected. The family court term is 10 years once you're appointed. Say Supreme Court, for instance, is 14 years, I believe, once you win your election. So it depends on what court you're going to go for, the method. But basically, my whole career has been in family court, so that's where I wanted to go. So, now what was the other thing you said? You said a lot.
How did you transition?
Oh, transition.
From practice to being a judge?
You know, it was, I don't remember it being that hard, honestly, because, like I said, I just love the process of watching and observing people and listening. And I also loved reading the law. Now, family court has much more than the Family Court Act. We deal with so many different acts, but I just love reading the Family Court Act and getting that knowledge from it and then seeing it in action. I mean, that was, for me, so the transition wasn't that hard for me in terms of my personality. I think I am generally a very calm person, and I think that goes a long way in the judiciary. I'm not person who yells or shouts, nor does the job require that for me to perform what I like to do. So therefore, the transition was not that hard for me, and I enjoyed it. I absolutely, probably from day 2, I said, this is for me.
Thank you.
I have 2 very different ones.
We'll start with one and we'll circle back if anyone else
Okay.
has.
So my question is more about the software that a lot of law firms have picked up. I'm a paralegal, so I've worked with 2 different Time Matters and TrialWorks, which both are disasters in their own very special kind of way. But I wanted to ask you, in terms of your jobs and how technology plays a bigger role now, we write emails instead of carbon copying and stealing carbon copy papers from other secretaries. So what have you seen in terms of the proficiency that incoming attorneys need to have, especially with this software? You know, like you said, there's a different software for billing than there is for case management.
All right, well, I mean, technology plays a role in just about every aspect of law firm management and law firm work. If you're talking about discovery and reviewing documents, relativity, concordance, the skill set that you want to have there is perseverance is one. Because you're going to be staring at reams upon reams of documents electronically, and you have to mark them whether or not they are responsive or non-responsive, whether or not they're privileged or non-privileged. And if they are privileged, what are they? Are they an attorney-client communication? Are they attorney work product? Are they a hot document? Is it something that, listen, you need to alert the partner's attention to this immediately, because this can either help the case tremendously or hurt the case tremendously. So I would say, perseverance and focus is one. On billing is a bit of an art form for associates. At my firm, we bill in 6-minute increments. I believe most firms do that as well. And your .1 counts for 6 minutes of your time. And what really is artful is the narrative portion of the bill. What are you writing to say that you did that took this amount of time? That's also important because the client is ultimately going to be reviewing that bill. And they may say, okay, it took you X amount of time to write this brief. I'm not paying for that amount of time. It shouldn't have taken that much time. That's where communication comes in, and you need to communicate with the partner that, okay, listen, I know you budgeted for this amount of time for me to complete this assignment. It's taking a little longer. Let's have a discussion as how do we want to proceed. Because what happens is you bill your time, then the partner, if he submits it to the client says, I'm not paying for all that time. The partner has to write that off. And it just doesn't reflect well on the partner, and it ultimately doesn't reflect well on the associate. So, I know I'm getting far afield of your original question about technology, but yeah, I mean, just billing, I would say for the billing technology, I would be non-technical with it, because most people enter their time at the end of the week, jot down what you did and how long it took you to do, and just do a quick summary and then get to it when you enter all your time.
And technology, software differs, so, and it keeps evolving, and evolving new ones coming out every day. So internship helps you to understand, because when you go work at a law firm, you are exposed to all of this. You will never learn most of this you will not know when you are in law school, or until you go do internship and you are in this firm and you see the software they're using here. If you go to the next firm, they're using something different. The kind of software I use in my office as a matrimonial attorney will be different from the kind of software Damian uses in his law firm, because he doesn't practice, So, internship helps you to learn so many things that nobody else teaches you. I've had interns in my office from paralegal schools and all of that, and I had one, and I'm like, okay, can you address that envelope? And she didn't know how to address an envelope. She didn't know how to address an envelope. I had to teach her how to address an envelope, So it's because it's not what they teach you at school, but this is skills that you would need in the like we're saying, everything is technology. You're writing email, but then you're also sending out letters as well. There are also little things that you're gonna do in the law firm that are not in your tablets, you know.
I just add two things to that. The legal research databases, you want to become proficient in that because each search that you enter into something like Westlaw costs a lot of money. I believe it's $99 per search, and oftentimes you can't pass that cost on to the client. So the partner's like, why did you spend $600 looking for the same issue? So you want to be able to craft the right, I believe the term is Boolean searches within Westlaw, so learn how to do that efficiently and proficiently. The second point is, real quick, be aware and try to be as cognizant as possible of artificial intelligence. Because AI is coming into this industry and we don't really know what it's going to do, but it is going to turn it on its head at some point. And you guys may be deep into your careers at that point, and you want to know, well, what does that mean for me? My research abilities, do they matter anymore? Because now AI is here, and AI may be able to function more efficiently than I can in those areas. So just be mindful of that.
Thank you.
In the back?
Yeah, one more question. When you graduate from from the college, right, and you get your degree, and I know it's about internship, but it's hard to find job because people, or the owners of the firm, they want experience, and they ask for 3 years experience, or you have some knowledge. But how do you deal with that? How do you face the problem when you just recently graduate from the school? Like, you don't have the knowledge, you don't know, yeah, you pass through the internship, but it's not enough. And sometimes it's very hard to find a job. So how to face that? Or what to do in that case? What are you looking for?
Dara, do you have anything that you're hiring?
So I no longer am responsible for hiring, but I did do a lot of hiring, and I think one thing which is difficult because obviously it doesn't pay, but one thing that a lot of people do when they can't find a legal job that they want is they work making money in whatever field they can get a job in, and then they volunteer their time in the exact area that they want to work in. So we hired people at Sanctuary who had worked as volunteer lawyers there because that showed a real commitment, that they really cared about that. And you know, obviously people need to make money also to survive, but if you have some extra time to be able to devote it to an intern, a volunteer lawyer position, you're really making a statement that you care about that work. And it matters to employers when then a position comes up in that organization. Are they going to hire the person who's been working as a volunteer lawyer there the last year, or are they going to look at random resumes of people they don't know? Well, if the person who's been volunteering as a lawyer has been good, that's the first person who's going to get that job. So, and that definitely happened at Sanctuary.
Okay, one more. How do you separate your personality about if you have a case and sometimes probably you are too you are put your human or your personality in front of the case? How do you divide those when you have to deal with according to the law, but you know that's not right because your personality or your beliefs or whatever it's taken other way? Like how you become strong and deal with that part?
Who was Karen?
Oh.
Easy question. Thank you.
You're like, you were hiding. I think that's a really solid skill that you develop over time. I think starting off in family court, I was often overwhelmed by the emotions sometimes, and it was through the wonderful guidance of supervisors that taught me how to separate work from, my life and my personal ideas and what I thought should or should not happen. Those conversations helped me, and when I started in family court, I was representing kids, and I think that area is an area where your personality is so right for you to come in and think that this should happen to this child or this should happen with this family. So I I commend you for just acknowledging that that's something that you need to think about, because it takes work and it takes practice. And I till this day, I say that the best attorneys in family court are the ones who know how to do that, who are the ones who know how to stand up for their clients and separate themselves from what's happening in the case, because it's so emotional, it's so difficult, that it's not easy to do, but it's possible, and it takes work and it takes practice, and going in knowing that that's something to think about is really important. I hope that
I can add something to that, just from a defense litigator perspective. The answer is you don't. And so we are counselors at law, that is our title, and we counsel people. So I have a privilege to be able to counsel an employer. A lot of the stuff that we're dealing with these days are sexual harassment claims. Since the Me Too era, we're seeing an uptick of claims against a lot of our clients. And, a lot of the clients, and after we do our investigation, if we find something is wrong, and yet the client wants to still fight it because that's bull and they're leading with ego, we're in a very privileged position to speak to that client and say, look, at the end of the day, it's bad business for you to fight this because of X, Y, and Z. And that's the way that if I find sort of a moral objection to what's happening in terms of the case and it's wrong, I'm able to sort of almost manipulate the end result to be the right thing. But you have to have a strong sense of self. You need to have a strong sense of ability and conviction of communication to your client and let them know, look, this was wrong. It happened. You're not going to win, and it's not worth the fight. You're going to lose your company.
Well, let's take one more question. Go ahead.
It's relating to internships and volunteering. So I heard you say basically if you work then you can volunteer somewhere, but there's only 24 hours in a day, and someone like myself who has 2 full-time jobs and school, it's kind of hard to get the volunteer experience. I was able to have experience in North Carolina doing an internship in high school, but in New York and the South is completely different. Also, I find that in New York it's hard to find a good attorney to mentor, to build a mentor relationship with. I feel like some attorneys do have the habit of taking advantage. That can happen. I'm very candid myself as well. So it's kind of hard to do that coming from a student perspective and having the confidence and going out there to find the right person to mentor you and kind of give you the guidance that you need. So how do you build that relationship?
I'll jump in. I know it's a panelist, but one thing I would suggest, and then someone else can jump in. I would say it starts with how you're finding these mentors as well. So it depends on who you're speaking to. I would say go start with people who you trust and who you think can guide you to a person who can mentor you, a professor, a family friend. You have to work your connections in ways that can lead you to people who can lead you to people who you can trust. That would be my advice. Hannah?
I know like the bar associations, the Brooklyn Bar and the New York State Bar, they have the mentor-mentee programs. So you can also get in touch with them.
And that's also usually for law students and not undergrads.
Well, I think they can also refer you to, to program. And also look at their website. Whenever they have like networking and CLEs, just go there and try to, network. Most times it's free for undergrad students and law students, and they will let you in, and then you can get to speak and see attorneys in areas that you really like, and get cards, and then follow up after the program and see who can help you.
And just one more point about that. I remember when I thought I wanted to be an elder lawyer, to work with the elderly. That's why I went to law school. Turned out I didn't like elder law at all, but that's why I went to law school. And I also didn't go straight through to law school, but in between college and law school, I thought I want to find an elder lawyer and I want to work for someone. And I Googled and I found this lawyer in New York who seemed to just do exactly what I wanted to do, and he was helping the working poor. And I thought, this is amazing. I don't know him at all, but I'm going to just write him a letter. And I literally just wrote this man a letter. I had no idea who he was. I said, here's my story. I'm really passionate about doing elder law. This is why I'm into law school. I deferred. I'm going to work. Can I work work here this summer. I did not think I would ever hear from this man, and he called me. And I actually worked for him for that summer and then realized I didn't like elder law at all. But that's not the point of the story. The point is, if you find someone who's doing what you think you would want to do, through reading, through searching on the internet, you say, wow, that's a person doing something in the law that I would really like, call them, write them a letter. Lawyers will be flattered if you tell them, I read about you and I'm so impressed with what you're doing. Lawyers love that. They don't have a lot of people telling them those sort of things, and they may well respond and let you come in and watch what they do. Shadow them one day. These are the way the relationships start.
Carrie? I would add to that with when you're reaching out to someone, I think just going back to the earlier point about being creative is I think you can think about different ways to meet this person and to get some of their knowledge. Not everyone is going to have the time to spend weeks interning for someone, right? And you sound very busy, but I what some students have done recently that I was very impressed with is saying if can meet you in court and follow you for an hour, which is what Dara just said, is shadowing someone in court. So that's something that you could try to do. Sometimes you can say to an attorney who probably is very busy, I know you're extremely busy, but can I have an hour of your time one day to talk to you about what you do? So I think you can try to be really creative with how you spend the time in trying to learn about these different professions and these different roles that folks have in the legal field. And I don't think it should deter you if you can't commit to a full-time situation with them. Just be creative about different ways that you can get in their ear and see what they do.
Thank you.
Hi, Judge Paul, sorry for addressing by your first name. I don't want to say your last name wrong.
That's okay.
I have a kind of a question, but I want your opinion on it. For judges that are in family law, right? Like when you're up there as a judge, you're supposed to take the facts and apply the law and apply it to the facts. You're not supposed to be biased in any case concerning family law, especially when kids are involved. Do you think that some judges, maybe they had the passion before, maybe they're just there for their own reasons, make it bad for the good judges in cases like the outcome of certain cases that where kids end up in the wrong homes or in the wrong situation, sometimes growing up because of the situation, or they didn't want to hear one side of the story and they heard, biasness? Do you think that could affect or it is playing a major role in the in children's life right now in the system?
Unfortunately, I cannot sit here and say that might not happen. I do think sometimes people stay too long in a position, and by staying too long, maybe they lose interest, they're not studying the law, they're not studying the people who are in front of them, and they sort of wing it. I believe that does happen, and unfortunately, sometimes people get hurt. But that's why there's the appellate division. Hopefully there'll be an appeal. You have someone looking over your shoulder to correct it. But it's almost like any other position. If you stay too long, if you get burned out, and that can happen, you get burned out, you're not going to be as efficient as you should be, and mistakes can be made. Before I left, retired, semi-retired, they had a whole seminar for judges about what Carrie Ann was talking about, taking care of yourself, because it can be very stressful. And if you don't know how to release the stress, how to exercise, whatever it is that you need to do, you're going to get burned out, and that will affect your decision making, no doubt. And it may be unintentional, and it can be dangerous depending on the type of work that you're doing. So, but it's hard to tell a sitting judge, probably maybe you need to do something else, take some time, whatever. I don't know any judge who's going to really accept that. we have such high opinions of us. But, yeah, I mean, no, it's a reality, and that's every profession. We can sit here and call our professions where people stay too long, and their ability to do the work just declines, and that happens. Now, incompetence is a whole nother story, and I won't say some are incompetent, but I think that you're gonna, well, yeah. But that's where the bar comes in. If, you know, the bar is aware of this particular judge doing crazy things, then you have the ability to lodge complaints and things like that. And it's not gonna happen overnight. But, yeah.
Thank you.
So, we've gone over, but it's been useful time, so nothing wrong with that. I think we're gonna have to end here, but I think some of our panelists might be sticking around for a few minutes. Please don't rush them, but if you have a burning question that we didn't get to, hopefully they'll be willing to chat with you for a bit. But in the meantime, I just wanted to first and foremost, of course, thank them for coming.